So the idea really is, the question that was popping in my head was, we're seeing technological advancements in the space of how we move our vehicles, right? So we have electric drives, we have more electric motors, we have all this and new technology. And we've seen stuff like this before. We saw technological advancements, the invention of the, auto engine or the BU engine. And with the vision of what people knew at the time, around the turn of the century to the 20th century, people say, well, it's great. We just remove the horses from our carriage, and that's what future mobility will look like, right? And I feel like we're at a similar point right now. We're saying, well, that's great. We have all of these electric drives. Now we just put them in the cars that we need. And the question is, what does it mean? Does it really work? There's evidence that it won't work. Also, this anecdote, I credited to the War on Cars podcast people where I heard it and I really liked it and I needed to share it. So the question, the initial question that started this project was the question, what if we took all the trips in Manhattan right now, the commuting trips by car, and just assume, what if tomorrow every one of these cars was an electric vehicle? Right now, it's only about 1% of all the cars that are electric vehicles. What would happen? Can we estimate the energy demand, the charging demand? Where would those people charge right now? Where might they charge in the future? So how can we transform the mobility space in New York City into a fully electrified transportation sector, as we need to get the climate goals of the city and of New York done in a couple of decades? So what would actually happen? There is a lot of research into charging requirements for electric vehicles. What many people are not looking into is the question of how people might actually choose their mode of transportation that has the capability of being electric. So we're seeing more than electric vehicles. We're seeing buses. We're seeing, of course, the subway that is already electric. We're seeing all these new scooters, like, the stand-up scooters and the mopeds, like Rebel. And we see all other sorts of electrified or non-traditionally fueled means of mobility. So the second question was, what alternatives do they have, and how does this choice of mode impact the energy consumption or the charging demand or the activity demand in the city? And this gets us to the final question where, what I, as a power system engineer, was very interested in would the city, the Manhattan power grid, actually be able to deal with that in a reasonable manner? Or can we estimate how bad the situation is and how much investment should be taken, and how does it relate to the choice of mode? And this is exactly what we did. We use demographic data, NYC open data, census tract data, and this is something that Jingrong is going to talk about with an overview on the data and our model of how we estimate these commutes and how we figure out the electricity demand, and then show some case and scenarios. And at the end, I have a nice little teaser for you. We'll do a Q&A session as standard, but also we have two wonderful people from the Department of Transportation here to volunteer to give like a small impulse statement at the end about this, and also be open to also answer your questions regarding something, and I will introduce them when we get there. So with that, Jingrong, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Well, hello everyone, welcome again. First, I want to show some interesting facts about the region's commuting situations. Well, this is a map about Manhattan commuters place of residence. Each dot represents 50 people. And we can get some interesting insights from this map. Well, of the nearly 3 million commuters in the region, nearly 2 million of them are from Manhattan and other boroughs in the city. But people also travel from neighboring cities and states, revealing some emerging workforce regions such as inner New Jersey, which has around 330,000 commuters. So how do they commute? Now the map is color-coded by people's mode of transportation to work. There's no surprise, subway is a predominant mode in New York City and Jersey City. The observable micromobility areas are in Manhattan in the gradient yellow. Well, this has something to do with the rendering method of this map. And New Jersey has a very impressive number of bus commuters. And in the surrounding regions, there will be more commuter rails in green dots. As for the car users, which accounting for about 13% of the total population, are more scattered in the region. If we overlay a layer of the region's transit network, the data is easily accessible from New York City Open Data Portal and other open data portal. We can see that people's mode choices are largely shaped by the geography of the region's transit network. But if we're thinking from our own experience, our accessibility to the transit stations is not the only concern when we decide our commuting method. We will also think about our income and other socioeconomic status, and sometimes even our preference will be the most important factors. And then considering all these and many other factors, it's very hard to predict the future. For a region that has nearly 3 million people. And this is not what we plan to do. Our focus is more about how to model this kind of uncertainties so we can build a more sustainable future that we like together. So this leads to the first important outcome of our research, modeling 100% electrified transportation. And I want to give you an overview of the model first. Don't be scared by the flowchart. Actually, our logic is quite simple. It's mapping commuter traffic to electricity demand using person-level data and the person-level modeling. And first, we pass our collect data into a commuter model to get an interim outcome called commuting scenarios. And then we pass the scenario dataset to an electricity model to calculate the electricity demand for the transportation sector and combine the result with the output of the power system model so we can get the final total electricity demand. And now let's take a detailed walkthrough of the model so it sounds less like a black box. And thanks for open data to make this research possible. Our approach is to collect person-level commute and the demographic data from American Community Survey via iCompUSA database. Now let's focus our attention on the small diagram on the bottom left, which depicts the activity of the homework commuter. Actually, we can imagine all the variables we need for homework commuting activity can be summarized as 4 questions: who, where, when, and how. So the variables we collected, including people's demographic data, such as their age, gender, and education level, also their live and work information, such as their income, industry, place of residence, and work, which are aggregated at the public use microdata area level. Also, people's current commute mode, arrival time at work, and so on. And with all this information and the constraint of each mode, such as which areas are micro-mobility friendly regions, what's the maximum age and distance of biking, we can determine individuals' available mode choices. Then we use a parameter called weight to control individuals' preference and simulate the impact of certain policy decisions. For example, as shown by the line width on the right side, we are incentivizing the use of e-bikes, e-scooters, and all kinds of micromobility, but also penalizing the use of private cars. And using this method, we can imagine we can not only explore the mode choices of each individual, but also we can create a mode mix scenarios for the entire population. And any commuting scenario will result in its unique energy requirement given people's mode choices. So how to calculate the electricity demand for the trip of each commuter? And we summarize the charging mechanism as answering 5 questions. Is the energy obtained from Manhattan, New York? How about round trip? When will the charging start, and how to connect to EV technical information database? And one commuter equals to how many vehicles? First, let's take car as an example. We can imagine that not all commuters will charge at workplace. The now single-family house owners are more likely to charge at home. And we assume that personal EV will only be charged once to cover a full round trip. Vehicle charging is a variant to play a very important role in future grid operations, so the charging start time can vary by person. As for for cars, the commuting distance will be the key parameter to connect to EV tech information database to calculate the charging demand. And right now, we didn't consider the impact of carpooling. So one commuter equals to one vehicle. Another very classic example is subway, which requires power at the time of motion. So the charging method is composed of two parts: the fixed electricity demand, hourly electricity demand, and the additional capacity per individual. And using the similar method, we can determine the charging mechanism for each mode, and finally calculate the charging demand for the transportation sector. And then we combine this result with the current state of New York power system. And this allows us to estimate electricity demand from commuter traffic. And we can imagine using this model, we can do a lot of explorations. And right now we create some preset scenarios to get some conclusions. We focus on 4 central community scenarios, including mixed mode, transit focus, micromobility focus, and car focus, with 3-level work from home assumptions to capture new hybrid working patterns. There's also another scenario called 2019 baseline scenario, which means people electrify their vehicles based on their current commute mode. So we have 12 plus 1 equals to 13 scenarios. Well, this chart shows the proportion of commute mode in each scenario. If we compare the transit focus scenario with the 2019 scenario, we can say there's less potential for additional capacity for public transit, especially for the subway in purple color. But the good news is we have more potential to favor micromobility if we look at the tall yellow boxes in the micromobility heavy scenarios. And this is the visualization of the electricity demand at hourly level. So how to read this chart? Well, there are 5 lines. The dark line on the top is the maximum load of the grid capacity. The dashed line on the bottom is the base load. And we stack the charging demand on top of the base load to show the total electricity demand. There are 3 color lines which represent different charging start times for private cars. Earliest reflecting people charging their vehicles immediately when they arrive at work. Latest reflects that they wait until the last minute, but can also make sure they can get fully recharged. And the distributed reflects that they randomly start their charging within this interval. And to aid users to get a more comprehensive insight, we built a dashboard. If you're interested in trying out this dashboard right now, welcome to scan the code or type the URL in your browser. I will quickly introduce how to use this demo. The layout of the demo is actually quite intuitive. The left side is the control panel where we switch between different scenarios, and all the panels on the right side are visualization of the results. They will change simultaneously while we switch between different scenarios. And I want to show some exemplary insights we can get from the dashboard. The first example is when we change the scenarios to 2019 baseline scenario. And let's look at the energy profile. Well, for most of the 3 electricity demand will all be very close and even surpass the theoretical system limit. And this indicates the need for infrastructure investment. But as shown by the flatter green line, this also indicates the positive impact of flexible charging infrastructure or policies that allows the distribution of charging demand over the day. The second example is when we change the scenario to micromobility habit, and we can see the energy demand will be directly reduced without impacting commuters' mobility. And this indicates the positive impact of incentivizing micromobility options. And the current studies are all based on these preset scenarios, but as you can see, our models support the creation of customized scenarios beyond all of this. So how to create customized scenarios? Our code of the models and the dashboard are all released as open source in our GitHub repo. You can follow the documentation, adjust the parameters, and get the results. If you are comfortable using Python, actually you can pass the resulting datasets of your create scenario to the demo and using the similar method to export, to visualize them and export the real scenarios. And one important application of our research is to provide quantitative decision support for policymakers. As we mentioned today in our attendees, we have actual policymakers working at this sector. So I encourage our attendees to think about, confronting a fully electrified transportation future. What kind of vision or what kind of what if do you think are promising, interesting, and sustainable for the city? And whether it's from your daily life or your expertise, I will show some exemplary what if from the perspective of our models. Well, our models are flexible enough to answer a wide range of assumptions from factors that will impact people's mode choices, such as what if New Jersey become a micromobility friendly region? What if more people work from home? To charging mechanisms, such as what if carpooling, what if charging can be managed across time and space? Even what if buses combine depot charging and in-route charging? Or what if EVs become more efficient? And currently, we finished one exemplary what if story and included in our project website, which is a story map. I want to introduce some background of this story. Currently, inner New Jersey commuters represent the largest share of New York non-resident workforce in Manhattan. They largely rely on the mass transit system and private cars to commute to Manhattan. At peak hours, commuter trains are already at their limits. This will likely worsen if the proposed congestion plan become effective, incentivizing even more commuters to switch from cars to mass transit, and there are some ongoing plans like the Gateway program. And we think about, New York City has so many bike lanes, and New York City and Jersey City both have city bikes. How about micromobility between Jersey City and Manhattan? Well, unfortunately, the George Washington Bridge is the only crossing built with pedestrians in man. And if Jersey City residents want to commute to Manhattan, the alternative approach is to carry your bikes and other vehicles on ferry, which will cost extra. So right now, Jersey residents are obstructed from using micromobility, such as electrified bikes. So we imagine, in our current micromobility scenario, what if a new bike access path was built and Hudson County become a micromobility friendly region? And we also run our simulation, and let's compare the result here. Right now, Hudson County has about 105,000 commuters. Based on model, if citing Hudson County as a bike-friendly region, will bring more than 70,000 micromobility commuters and reduce daily charging demand by 35 megawatt-hour per day. And this is the daily energy consumption of around 1,300 households saved daily in one county. And policymakers can take this kind of into their consideration. So this is pretty much everything about our research. I hope you all enjoy it. And finally, I want to thanks for Open Data again to make this research possible. And we publish everything we covered today, the code, the dashboard, and the publications if you're interested in diving deeper into the methodology as open source and open science. And we wrap up all the things in your story map. So welcome to keep this page. And there are also our contact information. And also thanks for this event to bring us together. We have been very looking forward to today and have a nice discussion with all of our attendees. So I will pass the discussion to Robert. Yeah, thank you.
Allow me to summarize, interrupt the main findings, just to get your head into the space again. So one thing is, to answer the first question, if everyone just had an electric vehicle tomorrow, based on the data that we had, very likely the Manhattan power system would just not be able to support the charging demand. And we felt like we've been doing somewhat generous assumption on where people would charge, but also many people don't have access to charging at their home because the amount of single-family homes where you can install a private charger is limited. Public charging at residential areas is limited, so usually people would charge, at parking garages at their work. And so that's one big finding. Second big finding is it really matters when people charge. So if you just go there and plug into the fast charger and then it sits there for the rest of the workday and is charged like in the first hour or something, and everyone does that creates a problem. So there's a big, we find incentive to promote the smart charging or somewhat time of use or the more distributed charging demand. And the third one, I think it's from two in the beginning where there's three findings, is micromobility really makes a big difference because the effectiveness of the per person energy demand that resolving charge demand is so much better, right? All right. So those are the main things. Now, I am looking forward to your questions. I hope there are some. Before yet, I would like to introduce our two guests from the DOT. Hong is the Open Data Administrator at DOT, or aid Open Data Administrator, I don't know. Anyway, it's fantastic that this job position exists at DOT. So thank you. So Hong works with various business units across the DOT and the Office for Technology and Innovation, and prepares all the 150 plus data sets that we have public access to. And Lewis is a policy advisor at the DOT, and he manages and supports the implementation of the strategic plans of the agency, including access to public electric vehicle charging. And if you're okay with that, I'll give the stage to you for a few minutes, and then we'll just discuss a little bit or audience questions.
Set some context on DOT and our EV charging initiative that's supplied. Again, Luis Gonzalez, policy advisor at City DOT. DOT helps to facilitate the safe, sustainable, clean movement and efficient movement of people and goods throughout the city. Within that is our goal for mobility specifically, that folks travel mostly using sustainable modes, focusing on transit, biking, and walking. We do realize that some people do have to drive for various reasons, and because of that, we are trying to assist folks in transitioning to electric vehicles. Most of my portfolio is on light-duty electric vehicle initiatives, so I'll focus on that. That's what I know the most about, but if there are questions about e-micromobility, I can also see what I have in mind. But to focus on that, we are focusing as a city on providing electric vehicle charging. It's something that DOT has been installing. We've installed some on-street level 2 chargers, which are the slower chargers, less power consumption across the city. And you can actually see them on our website, nyc.gov/plug-nyc. You'll find the list of locations for those chargers there. In addition to that, we've been installing fast chargers. These are the more power-hungry chargers at some of our lots and garages. One of the main leverage points that the city has for EV charging is that we have land. We can install chargers on street, we can install them at city parking facilities, and so on. But at the end of the day, we recognize that the private sector are really the ones that are going to have to step in to provide those investments for EV charging. We're here to prime the pump so that it's easier for folks, particularly lower income, moderate income communities, to adopt these modes if they need to. But we recognize that micromobility is a big piece of this puzzle. If everybody transitioned to an EV overnight, as this research proves, the grid wouldn't be able to take it. But that's not necessarily only an issue for DOT to work through. That's something that we're working through with our partners at Con Edison, and they're very aware of this. They know when we approach them about installing additional chargers that the grid needs to be upgraded, that more power needs to be provided through the grid. And we've been having those conversations with them as we've been installing chargers, and we'll continue to as we look to install more chargers in the future as well. That's my spiel for the moment, but there are questions.
John, I was just curious, is it all thinking, and there's, you can have the dot computer new. Is it both kind of? Hello. Is each individual self-issue to play for that kind of a percent of how to would transition into every grade to be for painful like the MTA, and how would it actually be able to work if there is no it's add into it that does, and that all requires the individuals to have their own electric advice skills and doesn't require anybody else. But would that make sense? Like, how do you transition the transportation for things there?
Slowly. Yeah.
It's not going to happen overnight. It will take years to adapt and to make sure that one, our grid has the capacity for it, and two, then that all the resources are available, but also the space and also the technology is there. That I'm the one then to have.
I think that's a big piece of it. The answer is slowly, and it's not a great answer if only because we want folks to be traveling more sustainably yesterday. But there's a lot of catch-up that needs to happen from all sides, from government, but also from the private sector, in providing the infrastructure for people to charge and for these vehicles to be more efficient. What we don't want is the future where everybody has a Hummer or a big EV just because they feel like they need it. Is that sort of, no?
No, my question is, for example, an MTA worker, and it's going to be working in electric sphere. How does he maintain his position? Good display work in electric sphere. How does that work? Because I'm assuming if it is electric, if there's only for one.
Oh, for an MTA worker, as in like maintenance worker? Is that what you're thinking, more maintenance? Not something we deal with directly, but it is a question that I'll give my personal take on. This is one of these pieces that with the introduction of electric vehicles, there's going to be a lot more folks that need to do maintenance in or for these chargers or for the infrastructure. I know as a transit buff that the MTA is looking into transitioning their buses to be electric buses. And that's going to require a lot of new workforce on their part because they're going to need folks to plan these chargers, to install these chargers, to maintain them. And right now, even maintaining existing chargers is a big job that we require folks to do. So I don't foresee any loss in jobs in that space. And it's going to be more so of like a job change to something else. But because it's a slow transition, it's also not like folks are going to change jobs overnight either. This is a years-long process. A lot of the goals that we have for the city and state for climate goals are few years out, 2035 for all light-duty vehicles to be electric, 2050 to reach carbon neutrality. Of course, we want to be more aggressive about that, but these aren't things we're solving in a year or two either. That sort of answer? Yep.
There's one more dimension to that we also discussed in the paper a little bit, and that is if you say, all right, we can't have it, get all the car by some year or something, so you need to only need car. I get the other EV, right? So the experience of owning an EV will be different from owning a car for once because you kind of figure out where you charge, how to charge, and getting people to be able to have an EV, comprehend the future of cycling will involve a lot of policy work, right? So there will be a lot of policy investment and discussion and changing things. So the question is, why not use this momentum where we change and have all these discussions and people are deciding whether or not they're into car to also think about, alternative modes and, putting energy there. That's one of us. Yeah. Should we just, are you okay if we just use the momentum or do you want to say something? Okay. Yeah, thanks.
So, if imagine you're playing game like checkers, it's I get your piece to the other side, and you just turn it upside down, you pick it up, you move it, technically you're allowed to do that, you get broke the rules of the game. I really like that last analogy where, like, imagine a way to bike through Jersey City or wherever. And so this is like a little bit slanted towards DOT, and you don't have to answer. It's like, when I think about this power grid, I think about a system. I know we got with offshore wind is coming in 10 years. Who knows? Like, it's a very large system, like, much larger than might fall the responsibility of single domain. On a policy level or an advocacy level or even like an investigation level, how relevant are these weather scenarios? How relevant is a footbridge between Jersey City and my town? Or in my fantasy worlds, where steampunk, like Kiva cars.
Right. Yeah, like it.
Difficult question to answer, if only because I don't have a crystal ball that'll tell me what the policy decisions of the future will be, or like what the political priorities will be. It could be that a pedestrian bridge or some type of bridge connecting Jersey City to the town happens, but that would require some coordination between the city and state that, frankly, or New York City and like a port authority, really, that would make that happen. I don't know that we could predict that, but I do think that these what-if scenarios are important to start thinking through what these future possibilities can be, more for advocates to say, this is something that we want to get behind and something that we're supporting, whether it's this bridge, whether it's some other key project, or just how do we get more folks to use micromobility and find a way to think through that, to get the politicians to prioritize those projects.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, my initial background is really large scale infrastructure investment and transmission. So based on what you're asking, it's a decade-long process to get these done, and having these kind of scenarios also like loops back onto it, like onto the project itself. Like you can say, oh, we have this scenario, we just extrapolate that demand. I know we see that in that, so we should maybe build this power line, right? That's what the model said. If we just extrapolate anything that we're seeing now here. But then if we're thinking, well, but what if in 5 years we decide to build this pedestrian bridge? Like the extrapolation of what we're observing right now in these scenarios just breaks down because it doesn't work anymore. So these kind of more speculative scenarios, but that have a quantitative value, or at least give some insights. Models give us insights, not numbers. It's a general rule. But adding the side that, this might happen, really force these infrastructure projects, which take a long time to do, and they may help to prevent them from being outdated before they're finished, right? Or because so that is something. Yeah, I was just curious. And this I'm up the DOT, but about the plan to expand the EV charging network. Is that published? Is that public? Is that something that we can hear more about, either areas or numbers?
Yes. So we have it in September of 21. Keep in mind, this is the previous administration at this point. We have published a report on Electrified New York where we outlined some of our EV charging goals, and just to run through some of those. We will be installing level 2 chargers, either the slower chargers, at 20% of spaces at our municipal parking facilities, which are spread across the 5 boroughs. We'll be installing 80 fast charging plugs around the city. And we also want to expand charging on street, curbside charging. I will admit that there is a number that's thrown into that report right now that is a little flexible at this point, and that we're thinking through a little bit more, trying to be more strategic about this rollout. But yes, and again, the website to look at what we're currently doing and what we're planning on doing, I'll admit, has been updated, that put down on me, is www.nyc.gov/plug PLUG
Is that right? And then for the on-street, is that be done through contractor, or is that something that the DOT is ever going to install and maintain themselves?
It's a pilot right now with Con Ed. Con Ed approached us like years ago about wanting to test this technology, and we, at the time, were open to it, had been, and it's been doing pretty well. It's something that we're looking to do in the future, and whether or not we'll own and operate it, who knows? We're sort of trying to figure that out, and what that business model, what the best business model for that is. But it is something that we are looking to expand.
I got my notes out. Can you repeat the website?
www.nyc.gov/plug NYC.
Hey,
Sure.
And
Sure. So my question's more for the part with the Con Edison not having enough. So, right, have you guys thought about alternative energy sources like solar panels? So there's another open data source online where you can see the temperature of different areas in New York and see which areas have the highest temperature. Maybe you can introduce like solar taps in those areas.
so I could give an anecdotal answer to that. I was talking to someone about the question of renewable energy in New York City. And the answer was that the space of floor that you need for the switchgear for a solar panel is way more expensive to use for renting than for switchgear for solar. Right now, at least. So if you put a solar panel or on your, in your new site for something or on top of your building, and then whatever, like 10 square foot or 12 square foot you need for the switchgear a month of baseline is way more valuable to rent out than to use for this. That's what this one person said. I don't have many data to fake this out, but I find it sounds believable. It's just switchgear. So basically, when you get, especially with PV, you get direct current power that is not immediately compatible with what you can plug in. So you need some electric switchgear to transform it into power that you can actually put into the grid. And so that's one of the reasons why you don't see so many wind power plants on top of skyscrapers and so on. But that being said, I think it is definitely something that needs to be taken into consideration. Again, what we took here is just 2019 data, and so is that you know what it. I'm interested to see what's going on with offshore wind plants that are now being implemented.
And to get that gauge, just to put power lines out there. And it took 20 years to be operated.
Sure. I mean, and one thing is, I think one interesting thing for the New York City power system will be that a lot of additional power generated offshore will be coming from North Island. So pushing against the bottleneck for this, that
The Kipsey doesn't like power turbines.
Well, yeah, sure. I always say they look nicer than a coal power plant or a nuclear power plant, but still, anyway. And then the other thing is that, where they're plugging it in, which makes sense into this coal power plant site that's in East River right now. The coal power plant's going to be decommissioned, and they use the existing infrastructure to plug in the cables from the offshore. It's also like Windows on the one hand, you may be able to get a little bit more power from the offshore in the future, but also it's fluctuating energy. So there's a lot of uncertainty there. So, but does this kind of answer your question yet?
I'm kind of curious about how data or like open data specifically could be used to better map out people's options. Like if you're asking about EV chargers, for example, like do we have data on where they all are in New York City, or is that something that DOT is working on? I also think this applies to other methods too. Like I bike a lot, and sometimes Google Maps tries to tell me like where protected bike lanes are, but it doesn't always really know. Sometimes it's like in Manhattan, there tends to be more accurate, that kind of thing. So I'm curious how those sorts of things could play a role in like helping people see what their options are that isn't like a typical part now.
Do you like comments? Question.
No, as for the locations of EV chargers, that is in the plans for release, but also this is a pilot program and part of open data release rule, I guess. There are criteria we have to be, and one of the criteria is that the data has to be maintained regularly and on a computer, but also that it's updated regularly. Because it's a pilot program, we're not sure if the program will continue, so we did wait a bit before releasing this data. The location is on our website, as Louis mentioned, but the downloadable data is not yet available on the Open Data Portal, but that could be in the plans. There is a vetting process that takes a while to do, but you will be on open data. Just if you want to sign up for the mailing list and get notification that you'll know right away.
One note to add, you can find a list of where all EV chargers are in the U.S., including New York. using the Alternative Fuel Data Center. That's a federal repository. I believe that was used for your research.
Yeah, we use that. Yeah.
So that one's updated fairly regularly.
And we only cover the fact markers. Yeah. And and I just want to say only the ones that are installed with DOT. So any Tesla chargers or private lot chargers, those are not included in our data.
But they are in the BFTC. Yeah, the filter.
Just to know, plungeshare.com is good with private database public basis. We'll be charging see reviews. People will comment. Plug is not working. It's not downloadable like the others. Scan. Question for Rob. I'm curious about your modeling of the grid and what's the granularity you're working with? Are you working with like actual transmission lines and capacity and transformers, or is it higher level in terms of the grid estimate?
It's a bit higher level. So what we have is a synthetic model of the New York ISO transmission system that was given us for another project. Now the data has been actually released. At the time we were writing this was not up yet, but now it's been released. It's from the ARPA Perform projects. And it was a project from the Department of Energy to assess risk and uncertainty, and if they relate to release a lot of data set. So what this data set tries to be is realistic but not real. That's the best usually you can get on these kind of data because they're considered, critical infrastructure and you cannot publish social data. So that's what we had. We did it credible. And so this covers the major substations in New York City. So we go up to a substation. So 58 we consider high voltage to left.
So I'm curious. This is like a power grid question. I work at a college that's like very interested in offshore wind, and especially offshore wind workforce development. And I don't do anything with that. But, learning about it, these like private corporations that run the offshore wind make these like really big promises about how much power they actually can like generate and like how many homes, each turbine can power. So my question to you both like as academic researchers and government organizations is how do you deal with that kind of data? Like, because, right, you can't really fact check it. It's theoretical. Is it like even useful to use? And when you're trying to do this like future modeling, how do you deal with this kind of like private enterprise data?
And it's a great question. Luckily, this kind of stuff with most infrastructure, it's fairly easy to check many of the major claims. Like, for example, if you look at the offshore project in Rotterdam Island, you kind of know the vendor of turbine, and then they're saying, our turbines can do, 10 megawatt, and then you look at it and you say, okay, there's one vendor of wind turbines that can do this, right? And then you can start thinking about, all right, how close can we get to the specs of this turbine?
100% capacity.
Yeah, well, exactly. That's the next thing. Yeah, so then you try to get the specs of this turbine, which usually you get from the vendor because they're proud of it and they're telling you, this is the size of the diameter of the windmill, and this is the electrical data on the generator that's inside. And then there are good models to translate wind and weather data into electric power data. So this is, I would say this is fairly accurate, and no one, at least when we do our research with that, we don't care what these companies say. We say, all right, can we get some information on the layout of the wind park? Can we get some historical weather information? There's some good data from the Electrical Power Research Institute, EPRI, and then translate this through physical models. You can get into extreme detail with that. So I just recently talked to someone who was modeling the impact of waves in the water on how the turbulence of the wind is impacted by the waves and how this changes the wind speed. So you can get very precise. Yeah. Accepting.
Are you, for New York City's electric future, are you more, what's the more relevant constraint, the power generation aspects or the power transmission at the grid aspect?
I would say transmission. Both are critical, but transmission is more critical. Torsion's mistake. Getting it in the city. I mean, getting it in the city or through the city even is like a historical bottleneck in your ISO system. With generations, that's not super clear. A bunch of the coal plants are still there going to decommission. It's not why is it clear what's going to do with the gas plants. There are a lot of the offshore winds coming in, so this also needs now be transport the other way, like through upstate, more upstate. So that's a problem. And it's one of the there was a big New York Times piece actually that explained it well. It's a big bottleneck for any renewable power project in the United States, resounds. And it's transmission congestion.
It must be really hard to update transmission lines, like to rip out street, like what that would might.
And they're in Manhattan, it's particularly pretty because there are incidents and there are things below the street. It's hard. I mean, but it's hard everywhere else because it's a big infrastructure project. It needs a lot of planning. It's very expensive, and we now have this major clash of old policies with new technology again. Like for example, historically, when you built mostly big generators, like a new gas powered plant or something, that there was a pretty significant investment. So whatever you built that, or a company wanted to build it, connected to the grid, they applied for a grid connection, and then the system operator would say, they would run simulations and do the math on what this would mean with the grid, and then either approve or disapprove the connection. And also they would know, well, if you do that, then we need to build a power line somewhere else, either close by or sometimes somewhere else in the grid, just because that's how physics work. And then the company that applied for the new connection would have to pay for that. What happens now, if we're seeing more and more of like smaller scale projects, like microgrids, batteries, solar farms around, we see like 50 that are applying and they don't have to pay anything for the grid, but then the 51st, somebody has to pay for a whole transmission line upgrade somewhere upstate because there's hauling, and they can't pay that because it's a small project. Right? You don't have the investment, the monetary momentum. And this is a big problem, man. It's not clear how this will work in the future too.
And I feel like there's a lot of scenarios you could do with your models that support better micro transit options, better public transit options, etc. And all those, it requires different kind of stakeholders understanding your model, understanding how to leverage it to really push that agenda forward. I guess I'm curious, from your perspective, what would be a couple big wins for you to say this research?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I feel like the access to New Jersey would be great somehow. Biking to New Jersey would be nice near a Jersey City that's doing a lot for micromobility and for bike riding. Yeah, or for streetcar. Yeah,
Light rail.
There are something. Yeah. But at least it's impossible with the commuter peak times. You can't get a bike a bit ridiculous. I think that would be something that would be great. But in general, I think that's what I tried to outline before, is this idea of saying, well, there is all this effort now about creating gas or transitioning gas fuel cars into electric vehicles. Had so much effort. Why not, use this effort momentum to think about other forms of electric mobility? And maybe we haven't seen the dominant form of electric mobility yet. Maybe it's it's a tricycle or something. I mean, that might be nice for a lot of people that don't dare to use two wheels, but also don't need a big full-size car. Right? And I think that's something that I would really like to see. And from a mobility policy perspective, like street design and protecting bike lanes, I also think it's not the end of it, of just distinguishing between bikes and cars, right? Yeah, there must be something in between. Like, are the deliveristas with their fast electric powered bikes or bicycles, or cars in the sense of where they should live on the street. Neither of them right now likes to have them, and it's not their fault, but it's a fault because there's no space assigned to that business. So I think that's into space of what we're speaking about with that.
Kind of jumping off of that, and also just to quickly speak to that, the deliveries just are codified as class 3 e-bikes, which are technically bikes.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and just as with like we know to have the electrical capacity for all of the cars if everything were to become an electric car or whatever. Have you is there a different point also to think same analysis to the batteries? The materials for the batteries, stuff like that.
That's a great question. Yeah, I don't know so much about it, and I would be comfortable sharing anything right now. But it is from sure something. If you come from a perspective of just get the CO2 out of the system, there's certainly part of one of the aspects is actually producing the batteries, producing bikes. What kind of energy is used to produce the vehicle? What kind of energy is used to charge the vehicle? What's the round trip CO2 footprint of the state depending on the fuel mix in the system right now? So there's a lot of aspects. So yeah, for sure.
Right. Yeah. This is because the comment is like, electric vehicles are cheap. I know the federal government gives these car companies free money, but let's pretend your average person, costs a little bit more than record pocket. We know people with low income take mass transit. So my comment is this doesn't really affect people who are on low income vehicles for cars, the electrification of these charging spots. I imagine will be a larger burden to people with low income as most things. So that's why I pander.
Sure, and I think that makes my point from before, because if we look at data from the Yuan side, the data set, and we look at traditionally at areas in your city that are traditionally underserved by public transportation, and then these people do own cars. It's like an old Honda Accord from '95 or something, and now how to get them to use a car that is carbon neutral or just use electricity. As you said, electric vehicles right now are expensive. Will it be just a car with electric motor, or would it be enhancing protected electric other mobility lanes out there? Or building new subway stations. I don't know. That's probably the hardest way to do it right now. Sorry, there was that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to disagree with you. I think there's a lot of low-income New Yorkers who have cars because they're low-income. They either live in, kind of transcendent to the outer boroughs. Some people are living in their cars, and, with this kind of EV future, I think you're right in that those are going to be the people who are going to be cut out of this equation. They're not going to be able to afford an electric vehicle in the first place. The car they're driving is probably an old speeder that they've had. It's been paid off for 20 years. It still runs. And I think about these things a lot, just in my own work life and things, and noticing who's driving what. And, the government kind of incentives for, congestion pricing and, the rebate for buying an electric car, that's not really going to help this, large segment of people. So I think there's a lot of policy that could be addressed. I think also, it's avoiding this problem of fixing these transit deserts, because most people don't drive in New York City for fun. It's really a work reason or a lifestyle, need. And it's instead of looking at a car as a choice, but kind of a necessity, I think is a good policy lens.
You refer to New York TMA or New York City 5 boroughs?
I'm talking about 5 boroughs.
So I could be wrong. I've read before, so I can't quote it. It's ratios 1 to 25 mass transit low-income riders for one low-income vehicle.
Right.
So
yeah, but we're city of 1 million people that are going to be a lot of
who are low income specific.
Yeah.
Right. But in a city of 9 million people, it's still a lot of people. It's just a lot of people still. They're not the majority, but it's a sizable set.
And compared to 1 to 3, people aren't at come up cars for transit. Also, like these numbers are may not be.
Right. And those, that doesn't account for like unreported, unregistered.
Yeah, this person has a fart thing.
Yeah.
They're lovely air quality to make people in lower neighborhoods experiencing higher rates of asthma, whether it's them creating the conditions or other people through it. It definitely, like, there is a stake for low-income people with regards to frustrating.
Was it the erosion of the proper fluid wheels have a larger contributing factors in the emissions with diesel like trucks?
That's part of it.
Hard to develop a part of them.
It's part of it. The noise pollution is the wheels. It's not the end of it. We know how to make very silent car engines, even with the gas fuel. But it's part of that. But
What if we made the wheels a special material that never erode? Or we make the roads a special material that never erodes, and if wheels are metal,
Yeah, that's the same.
sorry.
And then you have an issue of like having like they're gonna be there forever, so it's like true for trains.
I think he was suggesting to build the crossification.
Hey, did you have okay, great. Well, then I say thank you so much. I'm really happy that this kind of discussion and Q&A came together as I was hoping for. So thank you, Hong and Louis from the DFC Institute.
yeah.